I've talked before about false equivalence in the media, the idea that both sides in politics are just as bad. At the moment, we're seeing a really extreme example of that in the US, with Donald Trump using both-siderism to avoid criticizing his racist white supremacist base. And while this time it does seem to be stretching the limits of what the media will accept, generally they love false equivalence. Part of the reason that the Materia Ture story got the traction it did, other than the opportunity to both bash beneficiaries and avoid talking about the welfare system, was that it offered a figure on the left who had done something bad to balance out the indiscretions of those on the right. This was a chance to say, look, both sides are just as bad. Of course, if this is indeed the case, one has to ask why Materia Ture was hounded out of government while Bill English still remains Prime Minister, despite his equally questionable morality in claiming unearned housing allowances. For this narrative, both sides must be just as bad, which means that if in practice one side is demonstrably worse, the media has to make the less guilty side seem worse to achieve balance. And there's a really insidious side effect to this that I wanted to talk about. I came across it reading an article about propaganda used by Vladimir Putin in Russia. One of these tactics was called toxic cynicism. Simply put, make people believe that nothing matters. If your lies can't compete in the arena of lies versus truth, convince people that there is no truth, that everything is lies. In that arena, the best liar wins, and those that tell the truth are actually at a huge advantage. Part of Donald Trump's reason for parroting fake news over and over again is not merely to attack the credibility of his target, but to undermine the very concept of credibility. If everyone thinks that everyone is a liar, the best liar wins, and Donald Trump is a tremendous liar. Here in New Zealand, it's less about specific lies and more about credibility. How many people do you know who say, oh, all politicians lie, or they're all corrupt, all just as bad as each other? But typically, if you ask them for specifics, they might be able to cite one or two examples. Toxic cynicism has taken hold, and toxic cynicism almost always favors the establishment. If enough voters think, why vote, nothing is going to change, then nothing can change. When I suggest looking at party policies, I've even had people say, well, those are all just lies. But in general, parties do push their policies when they get into power. Sometimes there are compromises, and generally they do exaggerate on the benefits of those policies. But those policies are what they enact into law, and the policies from different parties are very different. Both sides are not the same. So even if you think that every party is just as corrupt, just as dishonest, I urge you to at least vote for the party whose policies you can relate to most. Because if you don't vote, you don't get to opt out of this country. Simply put, we're all in a hiking group, and we're voting on which path to take. Maybe one path is muddy, maybe one path is thorny. You might not like either path, but you are going down one of them. Even if you don't vote, even if you have to get dragged down it. Both sides are not the same. Don't let anyone get away with saying otherwise. Take care, be heard, vote.